I ordered food late at night, opened the door, took the bag, and locked it. But when I checked the peephole, he was still there, just standing in front of my door, staring. Then he leaned closer, close enough that I could hear him breathing. And he whispered that he knew I was alone. A few seconds later, I heard something outside, and then I saw it sliding under my door.
Story 1. I placed the order a little after 11. I left the app open on my phone while the movie played in the background. Low volume, just enough to fill the silence of the apartment. The hallway light near the entrance was off. Only the lamp in the living room was on, casting a weak yellow glow over the sofa and the small table. My shoes were by the door. One pair, lined up against the wall. The kitchen was dark. The bedroom door was closed. No sound came from anywhere else. The notification came about 20 minutes later. The car icon stopped just outside the building and then disappeared. A knock followed almost immediately. 3 short taps, close to the door. There was no sound of movement after it. I stood up and walked toward the entrance. My steps were slow across the floor. I stopped just before the handle. I remained there for a moment, listening. No footsteps outside, no shifting, no sound of someone stepping away. I leaned forward and looked through the peephole. The man was already standing there. His face filled most of the view. Dark hair, short and uneven. No hat, no visible bag from that angle. His eyes were directed straight ahead, not moving, not shifting. His head was steady, his shoulders squared toward the door. I stepped back from the peephole and remained still. Then another knock came. Slower this time. 1 tap. Then another. Spaced out by a few seconds. I unlocked the door and opened it halfway with the chain still on. He lifted the bag slightly, white plastic tied at the top. The handles were stretched tight. "Delivery," he said. I reached through the gap and took it. The plastic was warm against my hand. "I already paid through the app," I said, holding my phone up with the screen facing him. He did not look at the screen. "The payment didn't go through," he replied. He leaned closer. His face was near the edge of the door, close to the chain. His shoulders moved forward without stepping inside. "It says paid here," I said. "I need to check it inside," he answered. "No." He remained in place, not stepping back, not turning his head. His eyes were still directed toward the opening, his face close to the gap. "Just a minute," he said. I pushed the door closed. The chain tightened before I slid it off and locked it completely. The click was louder than the previous sounds in the apartment. It echoed briefly along the hallway. No footsteps followed. No sound came from the other side. I kept my hand on the handle, standing still, listening for several seconds. No movement, no voice, no fabric against the wood. I stepped back and walked toward the living room. I placed the bag on the table. My phone was still in my hand. The app was still open. The order was marked as delivered. No message. No change on the screen. I set the phone down beside the bag. A sound came from the door, not a knock, something softer, a slow movement against the surface, like fabric sliding across the wood. I turned toward the hallway and stopped. I remained still. The sound stopped. Silence followed. Then his voice came through the door, low, close to the surface. "I saw your shoes." I did not move. "Only 1 pair," he continued. His voice was steady and close. "You're alone." I walked slowly toward the entrance again. My steps were controlled. I stopped a few steps away from the door. I remained there, facing it. I did not look through the peephole. A slight shift came from the other side. A small movement. Then, nothing. Several seconds passed. No voice, no sound. I stepped closer and leaned forward, looking through the peephole again. The hallway was empty. No one in front of the door, no one near the elevator, no movement along the walls. The light at the end of the corridor flickered once and then remained steady. I kept looking for a few seconds, then stepped back. I turned the lock again and remained facing the door, listening. Nothing followed. I walked back toward the living room. The bag was still on the table, in the same position. I untied the plastic slowly, pulling the handles apart. I opened it and lifted the lid of the first container. Steam rose and faded into the air. The smell spread across the room and settled. I set the lid down beside it. My phone vibrated on the table. A notification appeared on the screen. "Your order has been cancelled." I looked at the screen. Another line appeared below it. The delivery driver was unable to complete the delivery due to an incident. I lowered the phone and looked at the bag again. Still there, still warm. The plastic was slightly open. A sound came from behind me. Not from the door, from the kitchen. A small movement close to the counter, something shifting slightly across the surface. I turned toward the kitchen. The light remained off. Only the dim glow from the living room reached the doorway, leaving most of the space in shadow. The bag on the table was open. One of the containers was no longer inside. I had not taken it out. I stepped closer to the table. The lid I had opened was placed beside the bag. The container was empty. I turned toward the kitchen again. No movement, no sound. I took one step forward, then another, stopping just before the entrance. My feet were aligned with the edge of the light. A small movement came from inside. Low, close to the counter. A brief shift, then stillness again. I remained where I was, looking into the dark space. Then, a hand appeared at the edge of the counter. It was resting there, fingers extended, still, visible in the low light. The wrist and part of the forearm were visible for a moment. Then it moved back and disappeared from view. Silence returned. I stepped back slowly, keeping my eyes on the kitchen. My movement was controlled. My feet were sliding lightly across the floor. My phone vibrated again on the table. I did not look at it. Another sound came from inside the kitchen. A slow, steady, chewing sound. Then another. The sound continued, even and consistent, no pause between movements. I stepped back again, increasing the distance between me and the kitchen. My back was approaching the wall near the entrance. The door was still behind me. Locked. The chewing continued, steady, coming from inside my apartment, from the kitchen, from just beyond the edge of the light. I shifted my position slightly to the side, keeping the kitchen in view. The sound did not change. Then it stopped, complete silence. I remained still, facing the kitchen. No movement followed. No additional sound came from inside. I turned my head slightly toward the table. The bag was still open. The remaining containers were no longer there. I had not moved from my position. I had not stepped into the kitchen. I had not heard anything being taken. My phone vibrated again. This time I turned my head fully and looked at it. a new notification appeared. Your driver has arrived. I remained still. Another knock came from the door. 3 short taps. Same rhythm, same distance. I turned slowly toward the door. No footsteps followed the knock. No sound of movement came from outside. Only the knock remained. And from the kitchen, at the same time, came another bite, slow and steady. The chewing sound returned from inside my apartment, from a position just beyond the doorway, while the knocking continued on the other side of the door. Story 2. I entered the gym a little after 3 in the morning. The front desk was empty. The overhead lights were on but dimmed. Rows of machines extended across the floor, most of them unused. A low hum from the ventilation system filled the space. The rubber flooring absorbed the sound of my steps as I moved toward the free weights area. My bag rested on my shoulder. I placed it on a bench near the mirrors and set my phone beside it. The screen lit briefly and then turned off. The rest of the room remained still. I picked up the bar and began lifting. The plates made a soft contact at the bottom of each repetition. The mirror in front reflected the rows of machines behind me. The space remained unchanged for several repetitions. The bar moved up and down in a steady rhythm. My hands remained fixed on the grip. A movement appeared in the reflection. Near the machines in the back, a man stood there, facing forward. His hands were resting on the handles of a machine. The weight stack remained still. The cable did not move. I lowered the bar and placed it back on the rack. My position remained in front of the mirror. The man remained in place. I stepped away from the bench and walked toward the treadmills. My steps were quiet against the floor. The distance between us increased. No additional sound followed my movement. I stepped onto a treadmill and started it at a low speed. The belt began moving. The reflection in the glass ahead showed the space behind me. The machines remained in their positions. The man now stood closer than before. He was positioned between 2 machines, facing forward. The distance between his current position and the previous one was reduced. No movement connected the change. I slowed the treadmill and stepped off. The belt continued moving briefly before stopping. The surface became still again. I turned and faced the main floor. The man stood near a different machine, closer to the center. His arms were at his sides, his body directed forward. His position had changed again without visible movement between locations. I picked up my phone and placed it in my pocket. I walked toward the stretching area along the wall. The mirrors extended across that side, reflecting the entire floor, every machine, every gap between them. I stopped and adjusted my stance, my hands resting briefly on my knees. Then, I straightened again. The reflection showed the man closer than before. He was positioned within a few meters, aligned with my position in the mirror. His body was centered in the reflection. I turned around. He stood there, facing me, at the same distance. No movement followed. No sound came from his position. I walked toward the locker room, my steps steady. The distance between us increased again. The door opened with a soft push. Inside, the lights were on, rows of lockers on both sides, benches in the center. The air was cooler inside. The floor was clean. No objects were out of place. I placed my bag on the bench and opened one of the lockers. The metal door moved with a low sound. I remained there without moving, facing the locker. Then, I turned slightly toward the entrance. The doorway remained empty. No shadow crossed the floor. No sound came from outside. I adjusted the position of the bag and closed the locker. The metal door made a short sound as it shut. I picked up the bag again and walked back toward the main floor. The door opened outward. The gym remained in view. The machines were in the same positions. The man stood closer than before. He was near the center of the room, facing the locker room entrance. His position reduced the distance again without any visible transition. I stopped just inside the doorway. He remained still. I stepped out and adjusted my position, keeping him in view while facing the exit across the room. The space between us remained clear. I began walking toward the exit. My steps were steady. The man's position changed. He stood closer to the path between me and the door, near a row of benches, facing forward. No movement connected the positions. I stopped. He remained still. I shifted my direction slightly and moved around the benches, increasing the distance again. The exit door stood ahead. The glass reflected part of the gym behind me, including his position. I reached the handle and pushed it open. Cooler air moved in from the parking area. I stepped outside. The parking lot lights cast a pale glow over the concrete. Rows of cars were parked in lines. No one else was present. No movement between vehicles. No sound from the area. I walked toward my car. The sound of my steps was more noticeable on the surface. Each step was distinct. I reached the car and opened the door. I placed my bag inside, sat down, and closed the door. The interior light turned on briefly and then turned off. I started the engine. The headlights illuminated the area ahead, casting long beams across the parked cars. In the rearview mirror, the entrance remained visible. The man stood outside the door, facing the parking lot. His figure was centered in the doorway. I shifted the car into reverse and began moving back slowly. The tires rolled across the concrete. The man remained in position. Then, his position changed. He stood further into the parking lot, closer to the path of the car, facing forward. The distance was reduced again. No movement connected the change. I continued reversing, then shifted into drive and began moving forward. My headlights swept across the parked cars. In the mirror, his position changed again. He stood directly behind the car, within the range of the lights, centered in the reflection. His position was now fixed, relative to the vehicle. I increased speed slightly. The car moved toward the exit. The mirror showed him maintaining the same position behind the car, moving as I moved. I reached the exit and turned onto the street. The gym disappeared from view. The road ahead remained empty. I continued driving. No vehicles appeared behind me. No movement appeared in the mirrors. I reached my building and entered the parking area. The engine turned off. Silence returned. The headlights went dark. I picked up my bag and stepped out of the car. The entrance door was a few steps away. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The hallway lights were on. No one stood near the stairs. I walked up to my apartment and opened the door. The interior remained still, unchanged. I placed the bag on the floor near the entrance. The side pocket was open. A folded piece of paper was inside. I removed it and unfolded it. The paper was clean on the outside. Inside, a short line was written. "You finished early today." I turned the paper. Another line appeared below. "Next time, stay longer." I remained there without moving. The paper was in my hand. The door was still open behind me. From the hallway outside, a sound appeared. A soft step, then another. Positioned directly outside the door. The distance remained fixed. No movement followed inside. The sound stopped. Silence remained in the hallway and inside the apartment. Story 3. The notification appeared on the phone mounted on the dashboard. The screen lit up with a system alert. An unknown accessory has been moving with you. The car was in motion. The road ahead remained clear. Traffic lights changed in sequence. Vehicles stopped and moved in both lanes, but no vehicle maintained its position behind me. I opened the notification. A map filled the screen. A small circular icon appeared, perfectly aligned with the position of my car. The path behind it matched the streets of my route. The distance between the icon and my position remained fixed. I watched it for a long time. The screen dimmed after a few seconds. The car continued forward. Still, no vehicle maintained its position behind me. The car stopped near a building. I turned the engine off. The notification remained visible in the list. No additional alerts appeared. I opened the door and locked the car. The street remained still. Parked vehicles aligned along both sides. No movement between them. No sound from the nearby buildings. I opened the notification again. The map showed the same path, ending exactly at my current position. The icon remained centered. I locked my phone and placed it near the door. The room remained still. Later, the notification appeared again. The phone lit up on the dashboard mount. The same alert displayed. The same icon aligned with my car. The path now extended further across the map, covering both directions of my route. I opened the map. The icon remained centered. The distance was unchanged. I stopped at a traffic light. Vehicles remained still ahead of me. No vehicle stayed behind. The mirrors showed only empty space or cars moving away. I moved forward again. The icon followed each turn, each stop, each change in direction. I entered a parking area and turned the engine off. The notification remained active. I opened the door and moved around the vehicle. I checked every side. The doors remained closed. The windows were intact. No object was attached to the visible surfaces. The body of the car remained unchanged. Then I lowered myself near the rear wheel. The inner edge of the wheel well came into view. The underside was dark. I saw the metal surfaces. A small, round object was attached near the inner surface. It was partially hidden behind the curve of the metal. It was fixed in place with a strip of black tape, pressed tightly against it. I reached in and pressed against it. The object remained fixed. The tape held it without lifting. I pulled the edge of the tape slowly. The adhesive stretched and lifted, releasing one side, then the other, until the object came free. I held it between my fingers. The parking area remained empty. No movement between the vehicles. I placed the object on the hood and picked up my phone. I opened the map again. The icon remained aligned with my position. I walked away from the car, holding the object out. The icon remained centered on the car. I placed the object on the ground and increased the distance between me and the tracker. The icon did not move away. It remained aligned with my position. I picked it up again and carried it to a trash container at the edge of the lot. I opened the lid and dropped the object inside. A short sound echoed and stopped. I closed the lid. I checked the phone screen again. The icon remained aligned with my position. I got back into the car. I returned the phone to the mount. The notification remained active. I started the engine and moved forward. The road remained clear. The icon followed the same path, maintaining its alignment. I continued along the streets, turning through intersections, stopping and moving. The icon remained fixed to my position. No vehicle followed me. No additional signals appeared. I returned to the same parking area. I turned the engine off, and the headlights went dark. The surroundings remained still, no movement. I walked to the rear of the car again. I lowered my position near the wheel well. A small round object was attached in the exact same position, fixed with a strip of black tape pressed against the metal. I reached in and touched it. The surface was smooth. The tape remained firm. The object did not move. I stood up and backed away from the car. The object remained in place. My phone vibrated. A new notification appeared. Tracker name updated. I opened the notification. A name appeared below the device. Coming home, Dad. The car remained in view. The object was still attached inside the wheel well. The street was empty. Then a sound came from inside the car. A short vibration, followed by another. I turned toward the vehicle. The phone on the dashboard mount lit up. A second notification appeared. An unknown accessory has been moving with you. The map opened automatically. The signal updated. The icon was now inside the vehicle. I moved closer to the driver's door. I looked through the window. The seats were still. The dashboard was unchanged. No object was on the surface. I opened the door slowly. The front area was empty. No movement inside. The phone screen stayed on. The map was centered. The signal remained inside the car. I leaned forward. I checked the back seat. The surface was flat. No object was visible. The signal did not change. I closed the door. The lock engaged. The phone vibrated again. A new option appeared. Play sound. I selected the option. A faint tone sounded from inside the car. It repeated at a steady interval. It was coming from the rear area. I opened the door again and leaned inside. The tone continued without change. I moved my hand across the back seat, then toward the floor. The tone remained consistent. I lowered myself and reached under the seat. My fingers touched a small, round object fixed underneath. It was attached with tape. I pulled it free. The adhesive released. The tone stopped. I held the object in my hand while stepping out of the car. I left the door open. The first tracker remained attached inside the wheel well. The second tracker was in my hand. The street remained empty. The phone vibrated again. The screen lit up. An unknown accessory has been moving with you. The map updated again. A third signal appeared, still inside the vehicle. I stood there, beside the open door. The interior was visible. The street was empty. There was no movement anywhere around the car. And the signal did not change. If something in this video stayed with you, don't ignore it. Save it. Watch it again tonight. And tell me in the comments which story felt the most real. Because sometimes the stories aren't just stories. Sometimes they are a warning. If you want more content like this, subscribe to Tales of the Darkness. And remember, once you notice it, notice you too.